세상을 다스리고 백성을 구하는 리더의 이야기, 경세제민 촉의 김유정입니다. 미지의 땅이었던 북극이 이제는 기회의 땅으로 변하고 있습니다. 전 세계는 지금 북극항로를 개척하며 바닷길을 열고 있고 북극의 신산업을 발굴하고 있는 중인데요. 그렇다면 얼음이 녹은 그 길 위에 그려질 세계 경제의 미래와 우리나라의 역할은 무엇이 있을까요? 개국포럼 특집 경세제민 촉. 오늘은 북극경제이사회 사무총장인 크비스트 프리데릭센과 함께 이야기 나누겠습니다. Welcome, Executive Director, Mr. Frederiksen. Thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me here.
And first, I want to ask you, could you introduce about the Arctic Economic Council for our viewers and how exactly does the AEC interact and collaborate with the Intergovernmental Arctic Council these days?
So the Arctic Economic Council, we are a pan-Arctic, so that means we are covering the Arctic region. We are a business membership organization and we are independent. So that means that companies are joining my organization. We have members from 10 different countries, all interested in investing in the Arctic. So from Korea, for example, we have Busan Port Authority as a member. And we were established by the Arctic Council, where Korea is an observer. And we were established more than 10 years ago, and we are headquartering in Norway, where we cover the whole region.
Oh, it has its own history, and it's really amazing that Korea is already the member of this AEC. So what is the most important and pressing issues for the AEC's agenda these days, and what are the greatest challenges the Arctic region faces, like climate changes or restructuring of the global supply chains?
The world is not what it used to be. So the world is changing very, very fast. And for companies, this is the biggest challenge. How to deal with uncertainty and the speed. For the Arctic region specifically, the biggest challenge is still climate change. So for a company, on the short term, you have to navigate geopolitical changes. In the long term, you have to navigate climate change and new environment. So those are the two issues we have to balance, short term and long term.
So discussion about the Arctic often center about the shipping routes and the natural resources. So in your point of view, which Arctic industries hold the greatest growth potential in the future?
So you can say traditionally for the last hundreds of years, there's been three big industries. Number one is seafood, so fish to feed the world. Number two is raw materials, so mining. And number three is energy. And all of that is linked to shipping because you need to be able to put it on a ship to send it somewhere. Those industries are also going to be the growth industries, energy, raw materials and seafood. But we also have, for example, defense is a big one, space is a big one, and also general infrastructure development.
So energy, raw materials, seafood, and also we can talk about the space and defense. Those all things are really important topics. But when we think about these Arctic routes, we have to talk about the routes for Russia because the cooperation with Russia has been significant constrained by the geopolitical issues such as the war in Ukraine. So how is the AEC navigating this issue and how do you plan to manage with about the geopolitical issues with Russia?
So Russia is a big part of the Arctic. So 50% of the Arctic is in Russia. And we don't pick our neighbors. You know, our neighbors are who geography gave us. Russia was one of the founders of the AEC, together with the US, together with Norway, together with all the Arctic states. And we still work with everyone. We still believe dialogue is important. And here business plays an important role because diplomacy is very different from business. So as long as it's legal, we work with whoever is legal to work with, of course. And when it comes to shipping, you also need to work with Russia for many reasons.
That's why South Korea is these days really actively focused on this issue, and they pushing the vitalize about the NSR, which is called as Northern Sea Routes. So how do you feel about the Koreans' vision and Koreans' potential? So what do you think Korea's feasibility and commercial viability is?
You can say that historically there are three big shipping routes in the Arctic. There is the Northwest Passage that's running from Alaska over Canada. There's the Transpolar Sea Route, which is running through the North Pole area. And then there's the most famous one, the one that South Korea is focusing on, and that's the Northern Sea Route. The Northern Sea Route today is all along the coast of Russia, and it has certain challenges. For example, it can be difficult to get an insurance. It can be difficult to break the ice, but it also has some advantages. That, for example, a ship going from Busan to Rotterdam can cut off a lot of the traveling times, maybe 10 days, maybe 12 days in sailing this route. So the most important here is that Korea, one, has experience in working in the Arctic, which is very good, but two, it's a long-term plan. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, and that it's going to be a money maker, this route, but maybe in 2040 it might be a money maker.
So there are advantages and still homework left. So you mean that we can cut 10 days to approach, we go through the NSR, but we also have the homework such as the insurance, and also we have to cut the ices to go through. So you mean it's not easy and it's not the short-term plan. So do you think how many times and how many years do we have to expect?
The benefits is that Korea has already had a lot of research in the Arctic. So Korea Polar Research Institute and also Korea Maritime Institute have both been working on this for many years. So you have a head start. Having said that, there is a pilot starting in September where Korea will sail, a Korean company will sail on the NSR. But I don't think it will happen the next 2-3 years. The war in Ukraine has to be solved first. Then the relationships between Russia and Europe has to be reestablished. So again, we are talking about it's more than 10 years, but we have to start planning already now.
Oh, I think our Korean viewers didn't expect about the climate change is also important for the Arctic routes, because we just thought about the economical benefits and geopolitical benefits, but how can we approach to this climate change benefits in the future?
So climate change or global warming in the Arctic happens at 3 times the global average, so it's much, much faster. That means the ice will melt, but it also means that some things will be more difficult. The key here, I think, to make money from this is to say research and academia will invest even more in the Arctic. So, for example, if you're doing satellites or if you're doing remote sensing technologies, you can make a lot of money here. We need to invest in monitoring in the Arctic. That could also be subsea fiber optic cables, etc. And also, because of the climate change will change the shipping lanes, shipbuilding will also be very important. So here there is money to be made. I think the key point here is for Korean companies to understand that the world is changing. And for the first time in history, a new ocean will open up, which is in the Arctic Ocean.
Because of the so many things and factors that you mentioned, especially about the advantages, so many countries in the world are interested in this plan. So South Korea isn't the only one country who is interested in the NSR and Arctic development. So which other nations are currently the most active, and which do you believe the best positions who can lead this issue and this initiative?
I always tell people that the Arctic region, for example, Singapore has an Arctic ambassador, India has an Arctic strategy, United Arab Emirates has an Arctic strategy, but so does Japan and Korea and China. So a lot of Asian countries are already focusing on the Arctic. If we look at the ships sailing on the Northern Sea Route, 2 of them are Chinese, 2 of the companies. Japan is still working with LNG there. But there are also other countries like Germany, Netherlands, Italy, they all have Arctic strategies, so it's global. But South Korea has a lot of expertise and a lot of competences built over many, many years. So I do think you have an advantage, both in Busan, with all the shipbuilding companies there, in Ulsan with the energy producers there, but also with the researchers and academia focusing on the Arctic. So Korea has advantages, but there's competition from other nations.
Oh, that's really a good thing that Korea also has advantages. Also, we really focus on the technologies of the shipbuilding. And also, it's really amazing that Singapore, India, Arab Emirates, and Japan also really focus on their technology and their plans for the future. Then we want to check first, as a global powerhouse in shipbuilding and maritime shipping, how do you evaluate South Korea's current standing and influence in the Arctic cooperation, and furthermore, how can you evaluate the level of the South Korea's technology about this future Arctic vision and the technology?
I think the main focus is for Korea right now, the main focus is on research and academia. So Korea is an observer to the Arctic Council, which means that they are a part of the climate change research in the Arctic. Korea is also a member of the Central Arctic Ocean Fisheries Agreement, which is a unique international agreement with the US, with the European Union, with Russia on fishing in the Central Arctic Ocean. So Korea has a lot on the research side. On the business side is still growing. So some shipyards are building icebreakers and research vessels. Some Korean companies are working in space and defense. But it's a growth sector rather than a developed sector. When it comes to technologies is difficult to operate in the Arctic. It's colder, it's more extreme weather. It is not like operating in Seoul to operate in the Arctic region. It's very, very different. So here there's still some to learn, but I believe Korea can get there.
Oh, so there are many fields that we have to recover and we have to advance. But we are more advantages in research right now, and we have to more think about the business and cutting the ice and technology and future defense. So what does the AC expect for South Korea moving forward, especially in which field?
I really call, so the Arctic Economic Council, we are a business membership organization. And we really want more South Korean companies to join the Arctic Economic Council to build up partnerships and relationships. We always say that business in the Arctic happens at the speed of trust. And trust building is very, very important. So we expect more South Korean companies to join and work with international partners. And you do this through building on the networks of the Arctic region. I really see shipping as the main sector. Like shipbuilding and shipping is a big one, but you can also look at energy. You can also look at battery production. You can look at steel export and so on. So there's a lot of other sectors other than just shipbuilding. There's also the critical raw materials and so on. But it really starts with relationships. It starts with knowledge building. So the business forum today was really an introduction for many companies to what the Arctic is. And I think it's important to introduce what the Arctic is, that we are not just polar bears and northern lights, we are also business.
Yeah, and also you mentioned that shipbuilding is connected with so many different sectors, and we also have focus on those sectors. So let's move on to the side of the shipbuilding companies' view. In the point of the shipbuilding companies in South Korea, so what key technological solutions should be shipbuilding and shipbuilding industries prioritize to deploy the next generation eco-friendly vessels on the NSR?
So green shipping is very important, and in the Arctic is even more important because we have a lot of renewable energy. So if you want to produce, let's say, methanol, ammonia, green fuels for the future, it's more likely it will happen in the Arctic. So one of the largest investments in green energy is happening in Greenland, for example, where the company Nuna Green is investing massively in producing more energy so we can produce more green fuels. But the companies that will produce the ships will be Korean companies. Here, there is some regulations that needs to change, not in Korea, but internationally. So for sailing in the Arctic region, you have the International Polar Code, which is managed by the United Nations. And here is basically guidelines for any company that wants to build a ship. It's rules about the ship, it's rules about the equipment on the ship, and it's rules about the personnel. So if you want green shipping on the NSR, we also need to work within international frameworks. And here Korea also needs to play a role.
Let's move on to more bigger macro view in Korean government. So what urgent task or policy advice that you offer to South Korea as a matter of priority to ensure the success in its Arctic shipping routes in the future?
I think number one is to think long term. Number two is to work with international partners. So if you are interested in doing Arctic shipping, you should not only work with the Russians on the NSR, you should also work with the Europeans, because you want to sail from Busan up to Europe. You still need to work with the European partners in the European Union and also the American partners. So number one is this, and then number two is also to get the business sector on board. Work with the business sector. To do this, you need to do collaborative partnerships. You need to work with other businesses. And then we also have to realize that the world is changing at a massive speed. AI will change everything. It will also change a lot of shipping. It will change the knowledge we know about the region. So it might suddenly go much faster than what we expected.
Then can you please give our Korean viewers, can you describe the ideal synergy that Korea's the future technology in the governments and shipbuilding companies, and when it combining with the future economic potential of the Arctic region, how can we expect?
I think what Korea can expect is for me, what South Korea should expect is the Arctic region is an add-on to the Suez Canal or the Hormuz Channel and so on. It will not steal away the shipping through the Panama or the Suez, but it will be an add-on. That's number one. Number two is for Korea, it would also be about strategic autonomy. So instead of only getting the critical raw materials from one country, for example, to produce cell phones or cars, suddenly you will get your critical raw materials from many other nations. So it will be not a backup, but a supplement to other nations. And then when it comes to energy as well, I think Korea should also realize that the energy world is changing. So traditionally it's oil and gas, but in the future, it will be hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, and so on. And we have a lot of opportunities for this in the Arctic. It will also change the business community in the way that is an add-on for South Korea, because we are only 4 million people living in the Arctic region. We are not going to outcompete on human capital, but what we can do is we can do partnerships and win-win collaboration, where the technology from South Korea will be added on with the natural advantages of the Arctic, combined with the ideas from the university and the execution from joint partners. And then we really get value and competitiveness.
Oh, especially you mentioned about the energy. So energy is more diversifying these days, not only the fuel energies, but because these days we face the Middle East war and the unsafety of the energy prices. So do you believe that in the future, after the Arctic routes, can we get more safety and more secure of the energy prices and everything?
I hope so, because I think it's the most difficult part for any company now is the changing energy cost. But if we look back and say what caused the spike in oil prices, it was because of the Strait of Hormuz being blocked. So this is just one place being blocked. That's why we need other routes to import and trade from, where the NSR could be one option. I think it's always, we used to think just in time, but now we're gonna change this to just in case. So we're gonna get energy from elsewhere. Norway is producing a lot of oil and gas as well. So in theory, Korea could get oil and gas from Norway as well, other than just getting it from the Strait of Hormuz. But we also have to realize it's the cheapest form is still investing in renewable energy. So we need an energy transition. So make sure that we are not too dependent on oil prices only.
So many people watched your presentation today at the Mail Business Forum. So can you please wrap up and give the insights and the conclusion for our viewers?
Yes, so the main insights was that business happens at the speed of trust. So doing business, you need to build up collaboration. Busan Port Authority has already signed a memorandum of understanding with a port in the Arctic. So they are already building up trust. I said there were three things, time three, you have to remember. One is that business in the Arctic will grow because of global trade, because of global tension, and because of global warming. But we also know that what will be exported is fish, energy, and raw materials. And the challenges are lack of investments, lack of infrastructure, and lack of skilled and qualified workforce. So that was my key takeaways. I would say there's a lot more things for Korea to get involved with. But there's an important saying that in the Arctic, it's always nothing about us without us. So if you want to work on the Arctic, you should work with us. And this is what South Korea is already doing. So that was my key point, was that South Korea has for many years built up trust. There are business opportunities, but there are also challenges. It's not only perfect, everything.
So I hope after people watch your presentation, people can realize and understand why the importance of the growing business in the Arctic and how and why we have to solve and make a conclusion for the lack of many different things. So to conclude, what final message would you like to leave for our viewers about this and also to the business leaders in Korea?
I would like to leave with, you have for many, many years looked at traditional markets. You are primarily looking maybe to the US, but the future is not what it used to be. The world is changing at a rapid speed, and you want to be at the next big business opportunity. And the next big business opportunity might be in the Arctic, because there you got governments like Canada, US, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, Kingdom of Denmark. You got those big economies there, and they are willing to do business. But it takes a lot of investments and it takes local partnership. So see the Arctic as a business opportunity in the long term, not in the short term, and prepare for working with local partners.
So for the last question, me and many Korean people expect and want to know about the AEC's future plan. Can you please share with us?
So the Arctic Economic Council will, in the coming years, actually focus on two big issues. Number one is artificial intelligence, how that will change our business. We are not the only ones doing this, but artificial intelligence will change all businesses, also in the Arctic. Number two is we will do a research on Arctic green corridors, shipping corridors. So how can we have these green shipping corridors where green ships in the future can refuel from one Arctic nation in another? So those will be the two main focus areas for us.
Thank you very much. I think throughout today's interview, Korean viewers can understand the next big business opportunities in the Arctic. So thank you very much for today's your really valuable time, and thank you for sharing your insights with our Korean viewers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. 감사합니다.
감사합니다. 네, 오늘 이렇게 귀한 시간 또 귀한 인사이트 함께 공유해봤는데요. 북극의 경제적인 가치부터 글로벌 공급망 내에서 한국과 한국 기업들이 나아가야 할 그 방향까지 통찰력 있는 말씀 함께 들어볼 수 있었습니다. 향후 우리 국가 또 우리 기업들의 북극 진출에 큰 밑거름이 되는 인사이트가 되었기를 바라보겠습니다. 오늘 함께해 주신 여러분들 모두 고맙습니다.